Hi, New. Okay. Cool image. I like this style. I like the face especially. Looks really nice. Let's look at some of your concerns. Okay. I hope I don't mind. I don't mind. It's fine. Your goal was to convey unusual situation in a contemporary theme. Yep. I think that came across. You tried pushing your hue range and paint fairly loosely. Yeah, it looks good. Impressionistic looks good. Weaknesses are mostly in the character. Her pose is stiff. Some of the details don't really make sense. Lighter values on her dress seem random, and you struggle with drawing clothing folds. Color choices are a bit awkward, feet look like they're pasted on, and you struggle with the pose being dynamic. Could use a little more darks. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things that I feel like is these stylized things. I don't do this myself because I don't really work with backgrounds too much. But often they work well, even with like a realistic background. So I'm wondering if you could have just almost used a photo and maybe with these signs like written them, and if it still would have worked. Or if it's, you're going for backgrounds and you enjoy doing backgrounds, if that is the better way around it. The first thing I kind of want to do is, I'm just going to try this. Maybe it needs to be lighter. I kind of want to just lighten some of these values here in the background. That might be a bit too contrasty. Just kind of create the feeling of like a really bright sun. And I'm just using color dodge and sort of lightening the areas. It's okay if I go too much because I can just tone that down. But I just feel like I kind of want to get this like blooming light effect. So let's put it off, and that's full. So I usually do this where I'll like go back and forth, like I'll do some effect way too strong. Oops. Let's say that, like way too strong, and then I'll just like scroll until it feels good. Like, oh, is it better or worse? Better or worse? Like the eyeglass thing, like flip them on and off. And it feels like nothing feels worse than something, so maybe there's good. Let's see. Better? No. Kind of like it. Yeah, about 25. Okay. Let's stick with that. Okay. Now, for the character. Yeah, I think your faces are very good, but the way you've stylized the face and the way you're approaching the face isn't carried on with the rest of the body. Like I can see with this hand, it's sort of like a realistic, more stiff hand, but this face is very stylized. And I guess this is a thing that's going to happen a lot where you have people who are, you know what style you want, but you don't have the experience to have gone from realism and then moved slowly towards the style, so everything is moved together cohesively. It's more like bits and pieces. So it might be a bit more difficult for you to implement some of these. But what I would do is I'd look at this style. Now you did the head. And I'd look at like, what are the components of this? It's simple. Note how you don't get the white of the eye, so it's excluding things that are close, like excluding, how do we say this, like non-essential, I guess. Info. Simple shapes. And kind of like considered. I don't know. Very expressive. So I want to make sure all of the rest of her is doing that. Now, you kind of did it with the shirt, which is good, but the hand does not match. So let me just fix some of the shapes in here, because I like this shape here, but I don't like this shape here. So I'm trying to think, okay, how can I improve it? Maybe that, and then that. So you've got like a bit more curve on this hair strand, and it's kind of following more of a rhythm now, with like this goes that way, then we go that way, then we go maybe that way. Okay, so I like that little small hair. Bring that in. Maybe something like that. And then for this hair, it's coming around this way. So let's just like strengthen that a bit. So here I'm just thinking about shapes and how you could, you know, improve some of the shapes you have. So things like this. Okay. That's cute, this thing. I don't know if you wanted to like give it a bit of a thing at the end, so there's a little more interest in that, or if you just want to keep it absolutely flat. I think either way works. Okay, so there, and then for this face, maybe I would like push a little bit so we get a bit of a distinction between this part, which is like more of the flat side of the eye socket, and then the cheek popping out. Okay, so we've got that. Mouth looks fine. Nose and the eyes are fine. The expression, does it really convey what I'm not sure what she's conveying, other than she's having fun, doesn't really care. So if that's what you're going for, I think you've nailed it. Now, is this head size appropriate? So what I mean by that is when you draw characters, like, is this a child? It looks kind of like, I can't tell. I think it's a child. If it's a child in this style, because it's stylized, the head, I feel like, should be bigger. Well, how are we gonna do this? Maybe I'll just draw directly over this. So let's make it bigger, or you could make the body smaller, but in this case it's easier to make the head bigger than the body smaller, because you want to keep everything cohesive. So you have to not necessarily stick to realistic proportions, but stick to the rules you're already using, because you're using rules when you do this. You're like saying, okay, the eyes are going to be this big. Well, are eyes really that big in a face? And the more like simplified your images are, the more you have to kind of stick to that, the rules in that. Okay, now let's work on the body, because that's something you were mentioning, you know, the body feels stiff. Okay, so she's got a foot here, she's balancing on this, and so what is her gesture? So this leg is raised, this arm, so doing this and leaning on this, but this seems like she's not grabbing, like doesn't really care. I don't know, it feels like it's a bit, I kind of want to do this because I feel like she needs to be holding on to it. Maybe that's even a bit too light, like grabbing, just so she doesn't fall, you know? Grabbing that. And then, okay, so now this one is this relaxed? No, this one is the weight is supported here. So when things are more relaxed, I'm more likely to use like curvy shapes or, you know, like blah, blah, blah. But when someone's like holding something, let's say a person was holding this, then I'd keep that more straight because I want to get that tension of holding that, and then whatever else is, you know, more light. So that's why this leg is kind of straight, because I might curve it a bit, but I want to get that feeling of tension. You can see just how like not really caring about correctness or anything I am right now. I'm just trying to get the proportion, not the proportion, the gesture. I'm trying to think. And with these simple styles, often the parts get noodly, like the arms are very thin. That's actually more in common with reality than you might think. If you look at people, you'll notice that, you know, when they stand and stuff, their arms are kind of, at least for me, I notice that they're thinner than I would think, and their torsos are bigger than I would think. I tend to have a tendency to make torsos very narrow, and that becomes a stylistic choice as well, but I didn't shrink the limbs enough. Actually a lot thinner than you might think. But in this case, you could go for like a more fat style, I guess. But you want to keep it simple. So, and anyway, let's not talk about that right now. We're still dealing with gesture. Okay, so this foot is supporting everything. This one is sort of doing this. Okay, so this one is like, sort of doesn't care, doing whatever. It's like, hey, what's up? This one is the tense. Get a thumb in there. This one's more tense. And then what would this be doing? Maybe it's like that. So it's more like a that pose, you know? Okay, so what do we have to do now that we have this? Well, I just use this as like a rough guide. So now, what style are we going for? Are we going for like a thicker style? Because I feel like with the body, you have not committed to what you're going for. So the head also will need to be moved. This head is not in the right place considering the body. It would need to be like more here maybe? Okay. So now, for the body. Okay. If we're going for, I think the torso is a good place to start because we're just like trying to figure out this shape, which again, you want it to be simple, convey the meaning, and we're kind of looking up at her because you can see, we see underneath the dress and we see under, like the horizon's way down there. So we're definitely looking up at this. So I'm drawing this here to show that, okay, that's the underside of a cylinder. Okay, we can get like the pelvis here. Okay, so yeah, the thing is like, do I do these types of legs that are more skinny, or do I do like fat shapes like that? Let's try fatter shapes. Here I'm having to shorten the hand. That's fine, because it's not about how long the hand is, it's about getting the gesture. Okay, there. So let's say that is the basic body shape. So where would the knees be? There's a knee, there's a knee. There's this other foot. And because I started with gesture, I can try to work with that, but I don't have the same limitation that I had before, where I'm just trying to get everything done at once. I'm breaking everything down simply. So, okay, so there's the hand here, I'm grabbing on. And same thing for the hands. Do we want to go small like this? Or do we want to go bigger? Yeah, like that. Either could work. I kind of like smaller personally. So this is your choice. This is something you have to figure out. And this is where, you know, we start with things that are more fundamental based, and then we move into style, because it's a lot of choice when it comes to what exactly do you want to do? How do you want to do it? Right? So here's this leg. And then this foot's going to be difficult, as you said. So I use a very simplified shape doing the hands and the feet. So I've talked about hands before. It's kind of this shape. Get the thumb. And then this shape for the fingers going in this area. And then boom. And then when it comes to feet, I use like this. Let's see how we do it. So there's like the ankle comes around. Then you've got this kind of like wedge shape, and then it flattens. And then you get like where the toes would go. And then from the side, it's like this with like a heel. And then you get this drop for, I don't know what it's called, the top part. And then this part, like if we're looking at this angle, the big toe side, like it kind of like does that. And then you get like this. So you get like this, 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 and then that. So these are all the angle changes. And then for this, it goes this way. And then we go slightly out, down, this way, a bit that way, and then that way. And then for the little toe side, it's just like this. Like a triangle. And then you get like sort of the big toe a little bit showing out. Like that, I guess. So that's the shapes I use. Okay. All right, so this one I'm just gonna have it sort of dangling. Oh, and from the top I use like this shape. And the toes are point. If you look at this thing, it kind of looks like a point. The important thing to remember is that the toes are facing this way. So it looks like, yeah, at first when I would see this, I thought like, okay, so put like a big toe here and then like kind of facing down that way. But no, it's like this. There's like an angle. And you get the heel, you get the connection to the top. So something like that. So we do that. And this one, we're looking up, so we'd probably be seeing like the underside actually, and you would get maybe something like that. It's hard to see. Let me erase. I'm kind of having it where it's sort of gripping on to this pole thingy. Okay, so now we've got this much done. Okay. Now I can use that as my next layer. And yeah, it might seem like it takes a long time, but it's actually a lot more fun doing it this way because I can think about so many different things and I don't have to, like, I can think now only about the clothes. So I can think about, like, how's that going to work? And it's much more fun for me. So let's say with this dress, right? Like, maybe it's getting pulled. So we, where's it go? It kind of goes below her knees. So about from here. So it's getting pulled from here to here because this leg is, like, pulling it out. All right. So now, and it starts about here. So let's say this. Okay, so now we have this dress and it's going to hug the form a bit here because it's against this, but then it's going to get pulled this way. It's going to go around the back here and then get pulled that way. And let's see here, maybe we pop it up so it stays against the body here, but then here maybe the wind blew or something. And now we get this type of feeling. So the tension is, I'm imagining the tension is here, and then the release is here. And still trying to think about simple shapes. So how do we best work this? Again, see how, like, rough I'm being because I'm just not smart enough to hold it all in my head. But that's okay. If you're not smart enough to hold it all in your head all at once, break it down. Make it simple so you can hold it in your head all at once. Okay, so now we have that. Should there be like a crease here? Maybe like one, and then it sort of balloons out. Something like that, maybe. Okay. Then with the shirt that pops out, keep that very simple as you had it. Just real quick. Okay. So we see under the shirt. Okay. So let's say the shirt goes around there, and then we see the inside. Now, with this type of style, you don't want to do this. You don't want to connect this to this. It's too harsh. I kind of did it here. Let me change that. So I'll do this. That's a lot more suited to this, like, friendlier style. You exaggerate the chunkiness or squishiness of stuff. So for instance, if you had a box, you wouldn't draw it like this. It's too, it's not chunky. So if I want this to look chunky, I just erase the parts where it connects and even here. And now that feels a lot more chunky. And then if you were doing it in sort of 3D, you would sort of have the end result where there aren't really harsh corners. Everything's sort of smoothed out and it just feels more friendly because it's, like, soft. Feels like the form is doing this as opposed to, like, this. Oops. Like, it's not doing that with such a sharp thing. And that suits to a much friendlier style. So let's include that. We see a bit under that comes around. Here's the torso. Leave some space like the other side. Bring that around. Okay, so now, oh, and this would all be in shadow. And then probably this leg, you could put quite a bit in shadow as well. And you could put a, like, again, with the shadows, you could do this where you block the whole thing, or you could leave like a little rim of light. And because the shape is so chunky, you could leave a bigger rim than you would think. And do it like that. where this part's in shadow, but you still see a little bit of the dress not in shadow. And do something like this so we end up with this, again, feeling more chunky. And I can just keep fixing it and adjusting it until it's what I want. And then here as well, I can sort of bring that all the way around. So it feels, again, more thick and soft. You don't have to though, that you can just make the whole thing black and or dark and it'll work. Like just do that and it still works. It's just up to you, personal preference. I like it better that way, so let's just fill that in. Okay, and then this leg. Now, when it comes to the toes, you don't have to draw them so separate. Like you could just do this and then kind of indicate a few of the, I don't know, the cracks in between. For this one, a little bit more maybe, because you're, you want to convey like sort of that this foot is going around. So that, maybe indicate the ankle and then the heel going behind. And maybe this part coming in front and then that. Then this shape, like if you're again, I said it's fine if you just use like a realistic background, but if you're going for something a bit more stylized for the whole thing, you could like even change these shapes so they're like a bit more interesting, a bit more fun. You know, you can stylize everything, or you can leave it realistic and it still kind of works. It's really up to you. I could have these sort of, maybe this one's this way, or this one's like rare. But again, not necessary. It's often in Japanese stuff, they keep the backgrounds realistic and the characters only stylized, and that's on purpose. So, we can get rid of this after. Let's just finish quickly. What's going on with her shirt? She's got a collar. And then it comes around. All right, so this, again, it's going, you know, we've got these wide sleeves. And so I can just do that. And then get the shadow again in here. And the hand simplified. So I drew this shape. So now I can just focus on making like appealing shapes. And again, you don't have to draw the crack the whole way like that. You can sort of do something like that. And then that suits this face a lot more. Get the other arm down. Notice that I just drew over this, so I get the placement of things correct. Then I want these hands like gripping down on this, because that's supporting her whole weight really. So I imagine, unless she's like completely nuts, so you do that. See, I'm going through, like I could even do this, but usually I do that on a separate layer. But anyway, we go through, we get that in, then I can just erase. It's so much easier to just do this, and now I have whatever is behind is correct. Like this arm is in the right spot. It's not like, oh, if I drew this, it wouldn't connect, wouldn't go around properly, because I drew it as if it was see-through. Maybe a shadow here. Okay. And we can get rid of this. And there. So That's how I would do it. That's how I would get this feeling of, again, you don't want to, let's say this had like splits. You don't want to do this where you go all the way. That's gonna lose some of that feeling of like cuteness. I'm not saying your dress is doing this, it's just an example, something to keep in mind. You want to do stuff like this where the lines don't really connect, so it feels more squishy and cute and fun or whatever, I don't know. But yeah, and for this, probably the knee would show a bit, so could get that in there and get the ankle a bit thinner, and because I'm feeling like this is a bit long, so just looking from here to here definitely feels a bit off, but that's fine, you know, if it's off, just fix it. Make it so it feels better. Okay, that feels more correct. And see, this is a rough sketch. And then after this point, then what I would do is sort of the final thing. So this really depends what your process is. But for me, after this, I would go in with, and I tend to use Clip Studio because it's got better brushes and it's just easier. But I would think about things like, you know, actually getting my lines the way I want them to be, thinking about line width and all that stuff. And then that's all I'm thinking about because I've got the entire structure is mapped out. So like, for instance, with this hand, maybe like, do I want to do it like that? Just kind of indicate that. Maybe this is like that. Get those shapes a bit rounder. Maybe add a little bit of subtlety to those shapes. Right? Maybe this one's got more gesture. Do that. Do that. Like that. Get rid of this. You can see it's a nicer hand. But it wasn't my first hand. It was like, okay, what came before? Well, this. That came before. So, yeah, it's a work in progress, right? You work in steps. And that's all I've got. So I hope this helped, and thanks for watching.